Now, after trans swimmer Leah Thomas thrashed her female competitors at the weekend, serious questions now being raised about whether the very survival of women's sport is under threat. The 22-year-old University of Pennsylvania swimmer became the first transgender athlete to win the NCAA title in the women's 500-yard freestyle, going from 554th in the event as a man to first as a woman. Olympic swimming medalist Sharron Davies has campaigned tirelessly on the protection of female athletes. And overnight, she revealed she's been subjected to horrific death threats because, as she put it, she has presented evidence-based facts on the unfairness of male inclusion in women's sport, which is sex-based discrimination. But the brave and defiant Olympian says she will not stop bringing the actual facts into the light or be bullied into silence. And I'm delighted to say Sharron joins me now. Sharron, first off, I just find it absolutely appalling that you have been subjected to death threats for simply standing up for female athletes. I mean, that shows you how toxic this debate has become, right?
It has become a very toxic debate. I have to say, just recently, though, you know, it feels like the tide is turning. I've been saying the same things for 3 years, and I've been trying to stop, you know, females from losing their places and losing their medals. But it seems as if we've almost had to have this happen before people can see how ridiculous it really is. So I think that now we can actually say, you know, look, this is what we thought was going to happen, and it is happening. And I think the vast majority of people don't want that. They do want fair sport for females. So hopefully something will happen.
I think you're absolutely right, by the way, when it comes to public opinion. But I'm much more worried, Sharron, about our sporting bodies, because just yesterday the Daily Telegraph revealed that British cycling are now considering changing their rules to allow a trans athlete to compete in the female category at the upcoming Commonwealth Games in Birmingham.
Yeah, well, they're not actually changing their rules. What the rules that they have are very, very bad, weak rules. They're exactly the same rules as the NC2As had last week, which is literally 1 year's reduced testosterone to 10 nanomole. Now, if I started to swim tomorrow morning and had 10 nanomoles of testosterone in my blood system, I would receive a 4-year ban instantly. That's how ridiculous it is. And it certainly doesn't mitigate any, you know, biological advantage through going through male puberty. So at the moment, it's so stacked against female athletes to be able to compete on a level playing field. And you're talking about such wonderful names as you know, Dame Laura Kenny and Katie Archibald. You know, these are superstars inside of British cycling that won't be able to live with someone that has a male advantage. So I just hope that this again brings it to everyone's attention how silly it is and how we can get the rules changed. But I find it so sad that we have to throw women under the bus to do what we already, you know, biologically know.
Big time. Can you just explain, Sharron, exactly what physical advantages Leah Thomas has?
Well, I won't pick just on Leah because it's not really her fault. You know, I'm
or any trans swimmer, let's say.
So I believe anyone should be able to identify however they like. However, I do believe in fair sport for both sexes. And there are two sexes, that's male or female. However you identify, that's up to you. But biological sexes, there are just two. So there's a difference of between 10 and 30% in elite sport. 10% being probably middle distance running, 30% being things like weightlifting, anything that's extremely explosive, and also things like contact sports. So, for example, a male and a female of exactly the same height and weight, a male will hit 160% harder than a female. So not only is this unfair, it's incredibly dangerous going forward in contact sports as well, you know, and things like rugby, taekwondo, you know, lots of different things. So there's a safety aspect to it as well.
And Sharron, obviously one thing that some sporting bodies are looking at is extending the amount of time that trans athletes have to be on hormone therapy. But according to what you're saying, that wouldn't undo the natural advantages that they have as a result of going through male puberty.
Yeah, it's not just me. I mean, there are 14 peer-reviewed studies out there and very, very famous, you know, sports scientists and biologists that are saying this. You know, big studies that have come out of big universities to show that reducing testosterone, you know, even up to 3 years takes only about 3 or 4% off. And when you're giving away 10% or even 30%, that's not going to make enough of a difference. So I think it's all about creating categories that are welcoming for transgender athletes. And no one ever talks about trans men. Trans men are biological females that are on testosterone. They're not actually allowed to compete in the female category because they're breaking the rules. But at the moment, no one even considers where they go because they're of no threat to men's sport whatsoever. So it's just women that, men are going to be winning the men's category and they're also going to be winning the women's category. So what's left for women? And it's just wrong. It's not about any form of transphobia. It's just about fairness for people, really. A nice, respectful, honest debate that's based on science is really the only thing that I've ever been asking for.
Well, indeed. And I would say that the Leah Thomas situation actually adds to transphobia, if anything. This isn't good for the trans community, is it? And I've interviewed Caitlyn Jenner on this show who says exactly that. And I feel like surely we should listen to Caitlyn. She's the world's most famous trans woman, but she's an athlete and she knows the physical disparities that you point out.
Yeah, and then that's the point, really. I think we need to defer to people that understand this subject. This isn't a sort of a cultural thing where anyone has a problem with someone that chooses to identify as transgender. This is about just straightforward fairness and biology. And feelings don't do sport. Our bodies do sport. And that's what's so relative. So I know I'm glad that we're getting the right sort of coverage now. I'm glad that people can see what we've been saying for a long time. I still find it very difficult that our athletes are gagged. Our competing athletes are not allowed to speak. Most of the coaches and the sports staff are not allowed to speak. And I get almost daily telephone calls from competing athletes in very, very upset.
And did you see, Sharron, that one of the women who lost her place because of Leah Thomas in the NCAA competition was actually booted off Twitter for complaining about it. So that is the concern, isn't it, that there's this conspiracy of silence around this issue, which big tech actually helps to control.
Yeah, and big pharmacy as well. There's an awful lot of money that comes in from big pharmacy to lobby on this particular subject. And it's quite scary, really, where it all comes from. You just, like with most things, Dan, you just follow the money.
Very true. So what's the solution, Sharron? Because what seems so complicated for me as someone who doesn't know sport intimately like you do is that different sports and different sporting bodies are able to set their own rules. Does the government need to get involved in this and actually start creating a legal framework that all sporting bodies have to go through, or is there another solution?
I think the government could certainly get involved, and I was a little bit heartened yesterday with what Borough said in Parliament. But I think the government has a part to play in defining what a woman is. If we start losing our language, if we lose the ability to explain what categories we are, what we are, how on earth do we protect it? So that's terribly important that that's protected, and maybe that is a government job. I think the sporting bodies are making movements, and I'm very proud to say that actually FINA, which is the swimming body, have got some very strong rules that they're intending to bring out. And also our World Coaching Association, 22,000 coaches across the world have come together and said they want to protect female sport in swimming. So I think if we can have one brave association across the world take a stand to protect female athletes, a lot of the others will follow. But it's that first brave association that has to do it.
Well, look, Sharron, do not let those anonymous trolls bring you down, because you're speaking for the majority on this, and it's incredibly important work, because for people who love female sport, and I know you do, I certainly do, this really is something that is so critical.
It is. For me, the passion comes from the fact that for 20 years, the IOC did not protect women's sport when I was competing. And they let people like me down that lost to an East German doping program. Yeah. But they also let all those young East Germans down as well, who many of them have actually died. So I have no faith in the IOC whatsoever. They do not pick countries that have good human rights histories. They do not, penalise Russia when they're back doing a drug state program again. They literally follow the money, and only 4% of the revenue that comes from the IOC ever goes to the athletes, 4%, which is just ridiculous. So I think that, if we can get the governing bodies to stand up and have a bit of backbone, then sport will be saved.
Indeed. Olympic silver medalist. But it should have been a gold, Sharron, as you point out, if it was a fair system. Sharron Davies, thank you so much.